The most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one. It never was. Think about every powerful figure you have ever encountered in your life. The ones who made you feel something without saying a word. The ones who walked in and the temperature of the room changed. The ones who, when they finally did speak, every single person went quiet. Not because they demanded it, but because something ancient and instinctual inside every human being recognized that this was a voice worth hearing. You have felt this. You know exactly what I am describing. And somewhere, deep in the back of your mind, you have always wondered, what is that? What do they have that you don't? Because it is not just confidence. Confident men talk too much. It is not charisma. Charismatic men perform. It is something older, something colder, something most men will live and die never understanding. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will not just understand it. You will see it operating in your own life, and you will never be able to unsee it. We live in a civilization addicted to noise. Every person you know is broadcasting. Social media, group chats, opinions on everything, commentary on nothing. Men performing strength by shouting it. Men performing intelligence by explaining it constantly. Men performing status by announcing it at every opportunity. And everyone sees through it. Everyone. Here is the psychological truth that most people cannot bring themselves to accept. The more a man explains himself, the less powerful he becomes. Every word is a withdrawal from an account. And most men are bankrupt by Tuesday. Carl Jung wrote about the persona, the mask we wear for the world. Most men become their mask. They believe that if they talk enough, perform enough, explain enough, they will eventually be taken seriously. But the mask is not the man. And deep down, everyone senses when they are only looking at a mask. The silent man has no mask. Or rather, he wears it so lightly that it becomes invisible. What you see is weight. Presence. A gravitational pull that requires no announcement. There is a reason we call charismatic talkers charming, and we call presence commanding. Charm is something done to you. Command is something you feel. Here is something most people never consider. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the most sophisticated form of it. When a man speaks constantly, he gives you everything. His insecurities, his need for approval, his thinking process, his doubts, his desires. He essentially hands you a manual on how to handle him, manipulate him, dismiss him. The loudest man in the room has already told you everything you need to know about his weaknesses. The silent man gives you nothing. And in that nothing, your mind does something extraordinary. It projects power. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. The brain abhors ambiguity. When it cannot read a person, it defaults to threat assessment. And in social dynamics, perceived threat and perceived power are almost identical signals. The man you cannot read, you instinctively respect, because you do not know what he is capable of. And nature taught every living thing to respect what it cannot predict. Machiavelli understood this in the 15th century. He wrote that it is better to be feared than loved. But what he was really describing was the power of mystery. The prince who revealed every thought, every plan, every feeling, lost the game before it started. The prince who revealed nothing made everything. Study any man in history who commanded rooms without performing. Lincoln, who was known for long silences at the negotiating table. Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick." Steve Jobs, who mastered the pause in conversation until his silence alone made other people feel the need to fill it, and in doing so, reveal their hand. Silence is not passive. It is predatory. Now here is where it gets deeper. And stay with me, because what comes next will change how you see every conversation you have ever had. It is not just that silent men say less, it is that when they do speak, every word lands differently. Think about the physics of it. If you pour water out of a glass constantly, it becomes ordinary. Background noise. But if that same glass sits still, and you watch it, and finally one drop falls, that single drop commands your entire attention. This is called the contrast effect, and it is one of the most powerful psychological forces governing human attention. We do not perceive things in absolute terms. We perceive them relative to what surrounds them. The man who speaks rarely makes each sentence feel like a verdict. There is a study from the University of California that found that people who speak less in group settings are paradoxically rated as more intelligent and more authoritative than those who dominate conversation, even when the content of their speech is equivalent. It is not what they said. It is the scarcity of it. Schopenhauer wrote that a man who is not capable of silence is not capable of thought. He was pointing at something essential. The constant talker is processing externally. He needs the conversation to think. The silent man has already done the thinking. He arrives at the conversation finished. And that is what you feel when you're in his presence. Not a man searching, a man who has already found. This is why the silent man's words have weight. Because you sense they have been chosen. Not performed, chosen. And there is something even darker underneath this. Here is the plot twist. The thing nobody talks about. The silent man is not just more respected. He is, whether consciously or not, engaged in a form of psychological dominance that most men never recognize and can never defend against. When someone speaks less than expected in a social situation, a subtle panic sets in around them. Other people start working harder. They try to impress him. They try to provoke a reaction. They begin to wonder what he is thinking. They begin to fill the silence with their own anxieties. And in doing so, they hand him something priceless, their psychological vulnerability. You have experienced this. Someone gave you a one-word response when you expected 10, and suddenly you were replaying the conversation, wondering what it meant, adjusting your behavior. Without realizing it, you gave that person power over your inner state. This is what Nietzsche called the will to power operating in its most subtle and devastating form. Not physical dominance, not loud aggression, the quiet rearrangement of the social hierarchy through the strategic withdrawal of validation. The man who does not react to your provocations, does not laugh on cue, does not fill your silences, does not give you the approval you are fishing for, that man becomes the psychological axis around which everyone else rotates. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most men are desperate for approval. They do not even know it. They think they are having conversations. They are actually begging. Constantly. Silently. With every sentence. Look at me. Agree with me. Validate me. Tell me I matter. The silent man has killed that need in himself. And the death of that need is the birth of real power. Here is the half point, and I want you to hold this because it is the foundation everything else rests on. You cannot fake this. I know what some of you are thinking. Just talk less. Just be quieter. Problem solved. But that is like telling someone to walk with confidence when they are terrified. The body knows. Other people's nervous systems know. Forced silence reads as awkwardness. Calculated quietness reads as insecurity masquerading as mystery. Real people can feel the difference immediately. The silent men who command everything are not performing silence. They have simply arrived somewhere internally that makes noise unnecessary. Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming so deeply yourself that you no longer need external confirmation that you exist. The individuated man is not quiet to seem powerful. He is quiet because he is full. Because the internal noise that drives most men to speak constantly, the need to be seen, to be validated, to matter, has been confronted and resolved. This is the most important thing I will say in this entire video. The silence is a symptom. The real work is internal. You cannot project what you do not possess. And what these men possess is an unshakable relationship with their own inner reality. They have sat with themselves in the dark. They have faced their own emptiness and walked through it to the other side. They know who they are with absolute clarity. And a man who knows who he is has nothing to prove. A man with nothing to prove is the most dangerous creature in any civilized space. Watch these men carefully, because there is a pattern. They are never early to speak in a group, but when they do not start with a qualifier. No, well, I think maybe, or I could be wrong, but they open their mouth and make a statement. Period. Full stop. Because they have already decided what they think before they open their mouth. They make eye contact that holds slightly longer than comfortable. Not aggressive, not predatory, just steady. The kind of eye contact that says I am completely present and I am not looking for your approval. That kind of eye contact is rarer than you think. Most people look away first. The silent man never seems to be in a hurry to look away. They do not laugh to make others comfortable. They laugh when something is genuinely funny. This sounds small. It is enormous. Laughter on demand is a submission signal. Controlled laughter is a dominance signal. Every social primate in the room registers this unconsciously. They move slowly, not lazily. Slowly. There is a difference. Slow movement signals that you exist in a body that is not threatened. High-status animals, in every species, move slowly. Prey animals move fast. This is evolutionary hardware. The man who is never rushing is broadcasting something at a frequency below conscious awareness, and most critically, they do not explain their decisions. They make them, and they live in them. When questioned, they may offer context, but they never seek approval for who they are or what they have chosen. Epictetus wrote that the philosopher has no need to justify himself to ordinary men, not because he is arrogant, but because the approval of ordinary men was never his currency. This last part is the one most people never talk about, because this path has a price. And if you are serious about understanding these men, you need to understand what they gave up to become who they are. They gave up belonging to the crowd. You cannot be this kind of man and also be universally liked. The silent, powerful man makes some people deeply uncomfortable. He does not perform warmth on command. He does not make everyone feel included. Some people will call him cold, arrogant, intimidating. And he will not correct them, because their opinion of him is not his responsibility. He gave up the relief of venting, of offloading his emotional state onto whoever is nearby, of processing his problems through conversation. He takes his confusion back into himself, alone, and he alchemizes it there, in private, in silence, and he emerges different. He gave up the pleasure of winning arguments, because he learned early that winning an argument in public is losing in private. The man who needs to win every argument is still controlled by the opinions of others. The man who can let someone believe they won, while carrying the truth quietly, is operating on a level most people never reach. What does he gain? He gains himself, completely, without compromise. He gains the deep respect of men who see clearly, and those men are rare and worth more than the approval of hundreds. He gains time, because he is not wasting it on performances, on justifications, on trying to shape the perceptions of people who have no real power over his life. And he gains something that has no modern name, but the ancient Greeks called it arete, excellence of soul. The condition of a man who has refined himself to his essence, who has burned away everything that was not him, through the heat of solitude and self-examination, until what remains is iron. At the beginning of this, I told you that the most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one. I want to return to that now, because what I did not tell you then is this. The silent man is not silent because he has nothing to say. He is silent because he has learned that most conversations are not real, that most words are just fear wearing a social costume, that most noise is just people trying to convince each other that they exist. He has nothing to prove, because he has already proven it to himself. That is the secret. That is the entire secret. And it is terrifyingly simple. Every man who has ever commanded a room, changed a history, led without asking, moved people with a single sentence, had done one thing that most men never do. He went inward. Completely. Without flinching. And he built something there that no external circumstance could take from him. The noise of the world is a question. A desperate, endless, collective question. Do I matter? Do I matter? Do I matter? The silent man has already answered it. Alone. In the dark. On his own terms. And from that silence, everything else follows. Sit with that.